Hello, this is astrologer coach Sonja Francis, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming new moon in 27 degrees of Virgo, which will be exact on September 19th in the evening at 10:30 p.m. Pacific time, which is also LA time, and September 20th at 1:30 a.m., nice and early in the morning on the East Coast in the US, which is also New York time. And so a new moon always marks a new moon cycle. And as always with all the new moon videos that I do, I will talk about setting some powerful intentions for the next 28 days. And I will give you the best and most potent times for doing so. So stay tuned. That will happen towards the end of the video. Also, consider getting your guided meditation, which was custom tailored for this new moon in Virgo. Again, I will talk about this in more detail towards the end of the video for those of you who don't know about this yet. All right. Now, with this new moon in detail-oriented, practical Virgo, we have the opportunity to learn about being of service. We also expect to learn more about what it might mean to improve our daily routines, get organized, and also take care of all health matters that might be going on in our lives, right? Now, another way to step into the higher vibration of Virgo, as best as you can, recognize that humility, self-improvement, and being of service bring you closer to your own inner divinity and your soul's path. And that's sort of like the higher vibration of Virgo. Now, Mercury, which is the ruler of Virgo, is very important in this new moon chart. It's in its own sign. It's in Virgo. And so the energy of Mercury, of course, is exalted. Any planet that's in its own sign always is a little bit stronger. So matters of the mind will be experienced more strongly for that reason. Now, Mercury also exits its shadow phase because it's been previously retrograde. It exits its shadow phase a day before the new moon becomes exact. So that means that we're entering a new phase and we're ready to take in new information, move forward with anything that has been on hold or delayed since the Mercury retrograde phase, by the way, which was August 12th until September 5th. So if there was anything going on during that time that felt like it was kind of like being delayed or not moving as fast as you wanted it to be, now it's able to move forward again. Now ask yourself with this placement, what in my life is calling out to be resolved? And where am I now able to clearly decide about something? And where do I need some more information, if that's the case, right? And just remember that all the questions from my videos are always available also on my website at astrologercoach.com via my weekly forecasts. And this time around, after September 17th, it will be posted on my website. You can also sign up to receive this via email in future by just emailing us to info@astrologercoach.com and just write weekly forecasts in the subject line. All right, and my assistant will add you to that particular mailing list. And the reason why it's great to get these weekly forecasts is because you can use the questions that I state in my forecast as a way to journal with what's going on with the aspects on a daily or weekly basis. Also to meditate with them. You can also just allow yourself to have these questions in the background so that you can allow yourself to notice a little bit better what shows up, what answers you are receiving throughout the week or throughout the month in regards to some of these questions. And that's why it's valuable to have them in front of you, right? Now back to Mercury in Virgo. Mercury remains in Virgo until the 29th. So it's going to be in there for quite a while. And so this gives us extra time to recognize where we have ignored important symptoms, feelings, or hunches, and where we need to eliminate what's unnecessary or dysfunctional, so like any kind of clutter. Could be physical clutter, but it could also just be mental clutter, right? Or anything that just feels like it's not flowing effortlessly or it's not just moving smoothly, right? These are the kind of things that are possibly dysfunctional in some way or cluttered. Now you can ask yourself here, what does my mind chatter say? Is it helpful, what my mind chatter tells me? And can I absolutely prove that what it is saying is true beyond the shadow of a doubt? And that's a really great question. I want to invite you to really investigate that question. And does it help me moving forward? So does the mind chatter that actually does go on in your head, does it help you to move forward? Because very often there's certain things that we say to ourselves that really keep us quite stuck, right? So we just want to notice that. It's not about judging it or punishing ourselves for that, but to really just notice that for ourselves, right? Now, Mercury and Mars are both in Virgo, and they're actually conjunct at the time of the new moon, and they're opposing Neptune in Pisces. And so there is this opposition that really asks us to find a balance between understanding the facts and also taking in our intuitive knowingness, right? What we're sort of the sensing. That can be experienced on a physical level, but on an emotional level. And we can just sense certain things, right? But it's more subtle. So we're being invited to really explore beyond the details and put our trust in the universal process and also universal timing of things, right? Neptune just says it is what it is when it is, right? And so that said, impatience might be a big part of this Mars-Mercury alignment in Virgo, because Mars and Mercury connected tends to be a little bit impulsive and impatient. So we want to kind of like be aware of that and allow ourselves to feel this trust in universal timing and trust in the universal process, right? So what will be helpful with that is, allow for some downtime and inner connecting with your inner divinity. If you allow for time to meditate, allow for time to just relax and just, listen to some music, or allow for time to just sit and breathe steadily and calmly, right? Those are, if we can give ourselves just 5 minutes here or there, that will help us find that balance, right? Now ask yourself, how can I best connect to the subtle messages of my body and soul? And what if I placed the mind in service to those subtle messages? So really get a connection between, these subtle informations that we're receiving intuitively, and then, what are we doing with that on an intellectual level? How are we moving forward with that on a, with mental clarity, right? And then the last question is, what actions could I take that would connect together the heart and mind energies? And that's, I think, a question we've asked many times before, even in the last video when we talked about the full moon, right? Because it's so important to be able to connect the mind and the heart, especially when there is an opposition between Pisces and Virgo, right? It's very essential. So just keep asking yourself this question, throughout your life even, like in what ways do I disconnect the two, in what places? Because sometimes we have, areas in our life where we're very good at connecting the mind with the heart. And then there are situations that show up where we're not so good at doing it, where we feel very disconnected, between the head and the heart. So it's just important to kind of notice in what situations does that show up for us, and in what areas of our lives are we doing better with it than other areas, right? Now, this new moon is also making an opposition to Chiron in Pisces. And so we're being asked to really balance, this Virgo energy which is about organization and practical improvements in our lives, with that Pisces energy. And because Chiron is about our healing process, it's about a need for emotional and spiritual healing, right? So we need to bring that into our day-to-day lives, into our day-to-day functioning. So just pay closer attention to your thinking and bring more of a holistic approach or more of a healing approach into your day-to-day lives, or into your day-to-day work, right? And so you can ask yourself here, what does need healing? Where do I need the healing, right? And where do I need forgiveness? Where do I need understanding? These are all things that we very often don't ask ourselves, right? And how can we bring that into a daily routine? How can we incorporate that, integrate that, right? Now the word heal comes from the same root as the word whole. So healing really reunites what was separate through acceptance and integration, right? So that's really what the word healing really means. So how can we, first of all, how can we notice what has been separate or what has felt separate to us? And then how can we start to bring acceptance to that and integrate it back into our lives in such a way that it doesn't feel so separate anymore? So healing can really only take place if we're willing to embrace our own flaws, our limitations, the places where we felt separate. Because, when separation happens, there is you creating a limitation of some sort when there's separation. And so love, we really need to love our most vulnerable places, the places where we feel insecure, where we feel that separation, right? And this is really something we can contemplate on for the next 4 weeks and see, where are those places inside of us and how can we start to love and embrace them a little bit more. And then, of course, what happens a lot of times with insecurities or with places where we have felt shame or where we felt, we're flawed in some way, there is sort of like a self-talk sometimes where we're blaming ourselves, where we're shaming, where we're attacking, where we're justifying. And so that, of course, doesn't help us heal necessarily. We also get triggered in those places very often. And so when we get triggered, we blame others, we shame others, we attack others, we justify ourselves, right? So it can go inward, but it can also go outward if we feel triggered. And so that can cause a lot of pain and suffering, not just for ourselves, but also for people around us in the world around us. So how quickly would you like to heal, right? That's the big question here. And you can ask yourself, in order to heal more fully, what cries out to be made whole in my life? Where is there a sense of separation and not feeling whole and complete? How might I connect all the levels of my being, the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual? Because very often, we're brought up in a way where one of those areas is not really fully appreciated or is not really fully developed, right? Where we feel either on a physical level, we haven't been able to really connect to our bodies in a healthy way, in a holistic way, right? Or mentally we feel like we have deficiencies, or emotionally. I think emotional healing right now is a big one because with Chiron being in Pisces, right? And there's been a lot of wounding around emotional sufficiency and emotional health that has been showing up, in our lives. But even growing up, for myself, I have to say that, I wasn't taught to be in a healthy relationship with my emotional body, right? And I wasn't even born with Chiron in Pisces, but it's just something that my parents weren't able to teach me because they didn't know how to do it. So there's certain, and then there's the spiritual level as well. A lot of us, don't really have a healthy connection to our inner divinity, on a spiritual level. So we really need to learn and take a look at all these different levels in our lives, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and see, in what ways is there something missing? Where do we not feel fully whole there? And in what ways are we not fully having a healthy connection to that part of ourselves? Because we all have those parts within ourselves, right? Now, what if compassion and understanding were the perfect tools in order for us to be on that journey, right? And so those are the two big ones, compassion and understanding. And what if love were the ultimate healer? And I think I've talked about this before in other videos, how love is really like giving love or receiving love or giving ourselves love, right? That is something that can really heal so much because it's an opener. Love it opens energy. It is open energy and it opens energy up. So whenever we open energy up, we're creating spaciousness. And when we create spaciousness, a healing can take place. Healing needs spaciousness. When there's contraction or density, healing cannot happen. So you can also read a little bit more about this aspect in more detail in my weekly forecasts on my website, or you can also sign up for those to receive them via email if you email us at info@astrologercoach.com and just write weekly forecasts in the subject line, right? Just like I mentioned earlier. But I write a little bit more about that because in the video I can't really get into it in too much detail. I mean, I already have anyways, but not more than I already have, right? Now, there's another couple of aspects I do want to touch upon with this new moon video because I think they're really powerful and important. Saturn in Sagittarius is making a T-square to that Chiron opposition with the new moon. And so this T-square really demands a shift in perception and direction. And so we're asked to really investigate what is true or false for ourselves in general in our lives, you know, with how we interact with people or what we take in, what we believe to be true or not true, right? Now, slow and steady, Saturn always wants us to go slow and steady, definitely wins the race with this T-square. And it's really critical to keep checking our beliefs and keeping up our emotional and spiritual connections. So not to disconnect ourselves from our emotional, spiritual body, but to really, you know, allow ourselves to investigate what we believe to be true and keep connected to the heart, right? Keep connected to that place. And so as best as you can, you know, be honest with yourself about your own limitations and your expectations towards others and life in general. Because, you know, the expectations that we tend to have about life, they come very often from life experiences that we've had a long time ago. And so they're really based on past events that are no longer relevant, you know? So we need to be very present. You know, Saturn invites us to be present with what's here now and be realistic about, you know, what's showing up in my life. And so how can I adjust my expectations to what's actually happening in the now, right? So you can ask yourself, what attitudes keep me out of alignment with my own humanity and my world? Because there might be some attitudes in place that are based on past conditioning that are really keeping me out of touch, you know, with what's actually going on in the world, right? And what might happen if I refrained from convincing others or forcing my truth on them? Because that's another thing with Saturn in Sagittarius. You know, there can be, if we get fearful about something, we tend to get rigid. And when we get rigid, we tend to want to convince others or force our own truth on other people. So what might happen if we refrain from doing that and just observe that also if that does happen, right? And what if connecting to my inner truth was enough? What if I didn't even need other people to know what that is? Or what if I don't even need other people to have the same inner truth as me? What if just connecting to my own inner truth was enough? I think that's a really powerful question with this T-square. And what might humility do for me? What might humility do for me? And that, of course, is a great question, not just for that T-square, but also for that new moon in Virgo, right? So this T-square really exposes the high price of giving our power to the biggest illusion of all, which is a lot of us believe that we are separate. You know, we are physically separate, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, that there's a separation between us and the universe. There's a separation between us and our next fellow person, that's our next fellow human being that's standing next to us. And physically speaking, yes, it may appear that way, but of course, in order to heal and feel the interconnectedness of life, in order to really get in touch with that on an energetic level, there's always a connection, right? We have to transcend dogmatism and denial and guilt and blame and martyrdom and victimhood. So these are all the things that sort of like keep us from really feeling that interconnectedness and feeling the energy flow completely, right? So ask yourself here, what might a healthy, realistic approach towards my own sensitivities and insecurities look like? And the best way to uncover our personal answer to this question is by checking our inner dialogue. You know, the inner dialogue is very, very powerful, because the inner dialogue basically is what you've been taught for the first 7 years of your life. You know, that whatever information came in the first 7 years of your growing up, that tends to be your inner dialogue. And so looking realistically at that conditioning, our attitudes towards life, ourselves, others, society, that is going to be very essential. And that's going to be very helpful. So this can start with a very simple set of questions that you can ask. What is true right now? What works? What works in my life? What doesn't work? Right? And how is that different from what was true 10 or 20 years ago? You know, because sometimes the older we get, the more we want to hold on to what worked for us in the past, because it seems easier that way. But when we hold on to what worked 10 or 20 years ago, then we're just stuck in the past and we get rigid and we're not actually present to what's here now. And that's where our power is. That's a powerful place to live from, is being present in the here now. So how can we release old dogmas? You know, how could I stop waiting to be saved? Right? So we want to ask ourselves that. And what role does guilt play in my perception of life? And how do I communicate my thoughts to others? And do I actually communicate them? Right? That's key too, because very often with, you know, a strong Saturn in Sagittarius, we tend to not always communicate clearly. We tend to assume that other people just know, you know, or we tend to make assumptions. Sagittarius is very good at making assumptions in terms of like, well, this is the truth, so it must be your truth too if it's my truth, right? But that's where communication comes in. And that's where really actually interacting with other people and actually communicating what your truth is, or not in an assumptuous way, right? But in a communicative way where we're having a curious approach to saying, okay, well, here's what's true for me, but you may not know that, so let me tell you, right? And then stay open to, well, is this true for you too? Or do you have a different truth, right? Again, this curious open place. Now, Uranus in Aries is making a quincunx to the new moon at the time of the new moon chart, or in the new moon chart. And so here, an unexpected turn of events could leave us feeling a little uneasy or unsettled. And quincunxes are kind of like, there's sort of like an internal thing that goes on with quincunxes, right? So the motto here really, I would say, would be, if you can just live by correct and continue, you know, because there's definitely an internal discomfort. And so we might feel nervous, anxious, you know, we might feel those energies moving through our bodies for the next several weeks. So just as best as you can, correct and continue. And then also ask yourself, how flexible could I be if I really tried? You know, how flexible could I really be? And what could a deep breath do for me right now, in this now moment? Because, you know, when we feel anxious, we're basically holding our breath, right? There's something that's making us nervous and anxious, so we're holding. So what could a deep breath do for me right now in this moment, if I just took that, right? And what needs to be shifted internally so I can stay open and aligned with my unique divine self? So there's an internal discomfort or misalignment at this time, right? So what needs to be shifted or adjusted so we can stay open and aligned, right? Now, Jupiter in Libra is also making a quincunx, but to Chiron in Pisces. And this has been something that's been going on this year several times already. So I'm not going to go into that too deeply. But what if I directed optimism to others and love and compassion to myself? That's a great question to ask yourself with that aspect, right? And you can also read more about that in my weekly forecasts. Now, Jupiter in Libra makes an opposition to Uranus in Aries, which will be exact September 27, 28. And it also makes a wide orb to Pluto in Capricorn. Now, because Pluto is slowing down at the time of the new moon, stationing, right? Because it's preparing to come to a halt on September 28th. Pluto is very exalted in the skies at the time of the new moon chart. And so this combination of Jupiter, Uranus with Pluto squaring Jupiter, that is more pronounced because of that station. And I will talk a little bit more about that Pluto station also in my weekly forecast. But just for this video, this combo with Jupiter, Uranus, and Pluto calls on us to really uncover the real issues in our relationships and deal with them authentically, right? So conscious stuff, unconscious stuff, it just needs to come up and needs to be dealt with. We can also have sudden insights and surprises that we can experience because of that Uranus-Jupiter opposition. And it maybe certain things might also be blown out of proportion because Jupiter is the expander, right? So you can ask yourself, where do I need to entertain new possibilities when relating to others? And what's out of balance, right? And in particular, kind of like that masculine, feminine balance, what's out of balance there within ourselves, with other people, right? What if I looked at relationship as a mirror, right? I mean, that can be very powerful with that Uranus-Jupiter opposition. Like what am I experiencing with another person? An opposition is always sort of like can be played out in a relationship. So what's the mirror? Because these two energies are somewhere inside of me, but how is it playing out, right? And what can I learn and what can I integrate as I'm seeing that being played out with other people? Is there an integration that can happen? And there are certain things that we might have an easier time integrating because we admire something about somebody else. We feel like, oh, this is a fantastic person. And then we start to be like, okay, how can I take this on for myself? And how can I live that out for myself as well? And then sometimes we have a mirror where we are like having huge resistances, right? Where we really don't want to take it on. And so in that case, we have to remember that when we have these huge resistances towards something, the volume of that mirror is turned way down inside of ourselves. And therefore, it's showing up in the outside world way louder, right? So it's sort of like a volume adjusting thing. So what we're seeing is really loud, and what's inside of us is really low. And that's why it's so loud out there in the world for us. So we need to kind of take a look at it and go, okay, well, if I turn the volume down on that a little bit, or if I turn the volume up inside of me and down what I'm seeing in the other person, like that quality, how can I start to integrate that, right? So that would be very helpful. And then how could my own perception of others and assumptions be the cause of my problems within my relationships? And that is a very powerful question. Because very often we do not investigate that. We take relationships as something that happens outside of ourselves and it has nothing to do with us and it's the other person's problem. It's the other person doing it. But if we could change our perception on that and just kind of own things a little bit more and say, okay, the assumptions that I have, about what's right or wrong or what needs to happen or doesn't need to happen or what's the norm and what's not the norm. What if I own those assumptions and just see if that's maybe what's causing the problems in my interactions with other people, right? That can be very powerful. So just sit with that question if you can, And as best as you can, find creative solutions and be completely honest with yourself and others. The best way to achieve this is by continuous practice of self-care and self-nurturing. And this is so important, and I cannot stress this highly enough, especially in times of stress, when there is lots of energy that's moving about, like in this chart, and also, since the solar eclipse, we've had so much energy moving about. What's really important is self-care and self-nurturing, because if you don't take care of yourself, it's very difficult to be able to manage life, right? And the more fully we can take care of our inner life, the more we can authentically and realistically engage with the outside world. So, it starts with a pair of very simple questions. What am I feeling? And what do I need? What do I need to feel more centered? What do I need to feel taken care of? What do I need to feel loved? To feel grounded? Like all these questions are great questions to journal on or to just ask yourself as you go throughout the next several weeks, right? Now, here are some coaching questions that you can also ponder with this combination, with this aspect. When I notice that I'm operating from fear, right? Because fear can be a very powerful, source of distress for us or conflict with other people. Or when I'm operating from self-protection, which Pluto very often is sort of like unconscious fears or unconscious ways where we're trying to self-protect because of something that has taken place in the past, right? Could I simply allow myself to be with that, without judgment, without criticism? Could I allow myself to simply observe that I'm scared, that there's fear present, that there is a tendency towards self-protection because of something that has occurred in the past, right? And just embrace my own humanity, that it's human, it's normal, everyone does it, so why should I be an exception? And how can I be okay with that? How can I be okay with just being human? And what might be possible if I was okay either way, with or without fear? Because very often we think that if there's fear present, we're not okay. When something in our lives stirs up fear, we think we're not okay. But what if you were okay either way, whether there is fear present or not? And that's kind of what's also meant by, move, when fear shows up, move through it. Don't let yourself be stopped by it. Because when we think we're not okay just because we're scared, we're getting stopped. But if we can shift our perception to going to a place of, I am okay either way, even though I'm scared right now, I'm still okay, then we can start to move through it. Then we can actually move with the fear, right? Now, I also want to invite you to watch my MP4 video presentation of the last forecasting forum that we had, because we talked about that Jupiter-Uranus opposition and the Pluto station in relationship to our birth charts. So if that sounds like something you want to kind of take a look at and how that's impacting you personally from now until October 10th, definitely feel free to go to my website, astrologercoach.com, and just click next to services and add the monthly forecasting forum to your cart on the services page. So there's a services page on my website, and at the very top you can add that forum to your cart, and I will send you that video presentation. Now, the message of this new moon is definitely very loud and clear, which is that when I align my perspective and my beliefs to who I am now, in the now moment, I can really overcome anything. And I have the strength to do whatever it takes, be a responsible being in my own right, and keep my mind and heart open in every moment of now, no matter what shows up. And that's very important, because very often the past, has such a strong hold on us that we really it's very difficult for a lot of us to just be present, right, in the here and now. So as best as you can, trust that all is well and that you're being led exactly where you need to go. Simplify, be mindful, dedicate yourself to what's important with compassion in your heart. And that last part is so important, compassion, self-compassion, right? So check and see, if you have a birth chart, check and see, do you have your ascendant or any personal planets in 25 to 29 degrees of Virgo, Pisces, Gemini, or Sagittarius? And if you do have anything in those degrees and signs, this new moon is definitely going to have a greater impact for you for the next 4 weeks. But even if you don't have personal planets in those degrees and signs, take a look at the house placement in your natal chart affected by this new moon. That's equally as important. And that will indicate what area of your life needs your attention for the next 28 days. So look at 27 degrees of Virgo. Where does that land in your birth chart? And what motivates you in that area of your life? How can you make some improvements in that area of your life whilst being compassionate with yourself? And then if you don't have a birth chart, feel free to watch my How to Read Your Birth Chart video. Also, if you don't know how to apply it to your birth chart, feel free to watch that video if you haven't seen it yet. Towards the end of that video, I will let you know how to get a visual of your birth chart for free online. And you will also learn how to apply what I share in my videos and weekly forecasts to your own birth chart. So that sounds pretty good, right? So if you haven't seen that yet, definitely watch that. It's on YouTube, but you can also email us at info@astrologercoach.com and write recording in the subject line, and then my assistant will email that to you with some handouts. And also a great video to watch right before joining for the monthly forecasting forums. And now before I talk about my forums and about setting intentions, I just want to very briefly mention Krista Mitchell, who is a spiritual author and crystal teacher and mystic. And she has agreed to collaborate with me and record guided meditations that are custom tailored to each of my full moon and new moon videos. And I think I'm so grateful for that. That's so fantastic. And so if you haven't tried that yet, just want to encourage you, if you love guided meditations, she's great. Krista is really great. And she's going to be providing this for us twice a month. And if you want to buy one of those guided meditations, go to her website at krista-mitchell.com. The link will be also underneath this video, and get yourself set up for some really great support, for the time of the new moon, because the new moon is an introverted time, and it's a great time to meditate and to go within. And so these guided meditations are really powerful for that. Let's talk a little bit about the monthly forecasting forum for those of you who haven't joined yet and who don't know what they're about. And then we'll talk about intentions. Now, just know that these forums have been created so that more people can have support on a monthly basis. And they're really the next best thing to getting a one-on-one reading with me. They're just a lot more affordable than a one-on-one reading. So I really want to invite you to take advantage of this format because it is reasonable in price and it is valuable. So we will always look at our own birth charts in relationship to what's going on energetically. Each month it will be a little bit different, and I always make announcements about what it is each month. Now for this month, for example, we'll take a look at the Jupiter movement. Jupiter is moving from Libra into Scorpio on October 10th and will remain in this powerful sign until November 2018. So this is like a little bit over a year. We will have Jupiter moving through Scorpio, and we can take a look in our own charts, where does that journey happen? In what area of life does that journey take place? So if you're interested in exploring that, join us for the next forum, which will be on Friday, October 6th, 2017 at 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time, and 8 p.m. London time. And if you can sign up and join live, great. It's always, the best way to do it. But if you are not able to join live because you're not available at that day or that time, definitely also feel free to register for the video presentation that will be sent out within 24 hours of the live event. And besides getting a one-on-one reading, this is really the highest level of support that I do offer, and it's only $24 for the 90-minute webinar. Okay, now you can register on my website at astrologercoach.com, and just please also be aware to fill out the registration form as well as make your payment on that page. And you can ask questions in advance. I will always try and answer as many as I can. I can't promise that I will get to your question, but the sooner you send them to me, the more likely that will be. And also, if you do ask questions, please stick with like one essential question for each person. I'm not going to be able to answer more than one question per person. And also see if you can align your question with what we're talking about in that forum for that month. So with this month, ask your question about Jupiter in Scorpio, right? What that means in your chart. Now, new moon intentions. We are here. We've made it. We've been through a lot already in this video, right? But to set powerful intentions for this moon cycle, The best time to do that is right after the new moon becomes exact, but not during a moon void of course phase. So this month we're going to have to wait a little bit before we set our intentions, because there will be a moon void of course right exactly as the new moon becomes exact. So we want to wait until 6:06 a.m. on September 20th to start setting our intentions. And we can set them until 1:30 a.m. on September 22nd, and that's both New York time. So once we've passed the moon void, of course, we have a long period of time where we can set intentions. And if you live in a different time zone, other than US East Coast time, feel free to join my Facebook fan page or my Twitter page. I will be posting reminders on September 20th and 21st throughout the whole day to let you know when it's time to set your intentions, and then it doesn't matter what time zone you're in. You can just look at when I've posted and just set your intentions at that point. Now, if you want more info about setting new moon intentions, you can go to my Facebook fan page and check out the notes sections, which can only be accessed via a computer. It can't be accessed from your iPhone or Android, unfortunately. But you can also go to my website if you want to do it from your phone, and click on weekly forecasts there, and then look for astrology articles, which is on the left side of my website. There's a link for astrology articles. Then you click on that link, and then you will see the article for setting new moon intentions. Okay, so all of that is available on my Facebook fan page, on my website. Now, again, all the questions from this video are available via my website as well, via the weekly forecast after September 17th. So if you want to receive them via email in the future, definitely feel free to email us at info@astrologercoach.com and write weekly forecast in the subject line. And if you don't want to receive emails every week, then feel free to sign up for my newsletter. That gets sent out approximately twice a month. And you can email us at info@astrologercoach.com and just write newsletter in the subject line. The newsletter just has special offers in it, videos, announcements about courses, business changes, anything that I'm doing. I will just make announcements in my newsletter. So if you're interested in being a part of that, then definitely feel free to sign up. And then any general questions that you have about the new moon or about astrology, always feel free to email me at sonja@astrologercoach.com. That's SONJA@astrologercoach.com. If you have a personal question, however, that requires of me to pull up your birth chart, I will ask you to book a reading with me on my website, so that I can honor my time and also make sure I can answer your question fully and completely. And any other questions that are connected to what's coming up within the next 30 to 40 days, you can also ask those questions during my monthly forecasting forum. Okay, so that's another option. So feel free to register for that. And that's it. So have a fantastic new moon. Remember, it's an introverted time. So go within, meditate, get still with yourself, with your body, with your own inner divinity, and just see what's coming up and what wants to be created for the next 28 days. All right. This is Astrologer Coach Sonja Francis. Goodbye.